The following program is a public access production. Comcast is required to provide time on this channel and make it available pursuant to franchise agreements with the communities we serve. Comcast is not affiliated with the following program or the producers of public access programming and is not responsible for the content. The following program does not reflect the opinions of Comcast or its affiliates.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum, one of many that you probably have attended here, because I see many familiar faces, and it only demonstrates your great interest in government and the fact that you really want to hear everything directly from the candidates. So we're very glad to have you here, and there are strict rules to the forum, and our moderator, Kathy Tate Brandis, who is a professional with our League of Women Voters at this job, will explain the rules and the procedures of the forum. If you need anything at any time, just raise your hand, we'll come to you.
Thanks so much. Thank you all for being here. Standing room only crowd, which is wonderful, and crowds are always great when I come to Park Ridge. It's a very involved community, which of course, as the League of Women Voters, we love to see. All right, I'm gonna go right into the rules, and let me start though, if you think you might want to ask a question, or you know in the middle you want to ask a question, put your hand up. And that lovely woman in green, who happens to be my mother, will bring you a card and indicate to her quietly if you also might need to have a pen or a pencil. If you have written a question and we don't already have it, we actually have a great stack of questions already, then put your card in the air. She'll come and get it. Now, the candidates have agreed to the rules. I'm going to go over them with you so that we're all on the same page. And I know that different organizations run their forums, and sometimes they do debates. This is a forum, not a debate, with different rules. So I just want to be sure that everyone in here knows that we're on the up and up, and this is the way we always do it. So it might be a more mundane format maybe than you might have looked forward to or that you might be used to, but it's what we do, and it seems to work pretty well for us. So you can't have any signs in this room, and I think we've already taken care of one instance of that, but no raising of signs, no noisemakers and things like that. Your candidates will each have 2 minutes for their opening statement. They have, well, they didn't actually flip, they drew numbers for order. So Mr. Riles is going first. He's going to have the first 2-minute opener, but then Mr. Schmidt will answer the first question first. But in our format, every candidate gets a shot at the same question. However, we don't have a rebuttal format, and the candidates are very aware that if they've already had their minute and their opponent has something to say that they don't agree with, they're going to be busily taking excellent notes, because that will come up again at the end when they have an opportunity to wrap everything up. So we are not a debate with a rebuttal format. So we're not going to be doing that. Then they'll have 1 minute to answer each question. They won't need a full minute. I flipped through some of these necessarily for all of the questions, and then we'll get to more. We will end at 8 o'clock. No matter how many questions there are, but if we don't have enough questions, we'll just end early. But for sure, I can promise you we'll get you out the door by 8 o'clock. Their summary will be 1.5 minutes, unless it seems like there are a lot of unanswered challenges, in which case I might stop us a little bit earlier and add a little bit at the end. Now, for the timing, I've asked these extremely nice women in the front row to be brutal. So as soon as the stop goes up, it's going to be raised. Now that doesn't mean that the candidate has done something wrong. It just means that they will wind up that sentence with the intake of breath that they have already taken and without a lot of dependent clauses, and then we'll get a lot of questions answered. Now, when you write your question, it has to be appropriate for the level of office. So, for example, what are we going to do about the state's pension ramp or something like that is not really for your mayoral candidate, as interested as we might all be in a solution to that. It needs to be legible because I'll be reading it on the fly. My card sorter is sorting for duplication, so you might hear a similar question to yours or what seems like yours and something else. We're going to get as many as we can in, and we're not going to duplicate, but we might mix some a little bit together. Absolutely no personal attacks, and I've needed to do this before only rarely, but if we hear a personal attack from a candidate, the opponent will be given some extra time. The timekeepers will be told how to handle that. I don't anticipate it at all, but if you have written something that's sort of a personal attack on your card, do not expect to hear it read out loud today. All of the questions need to be capable of being addressed by both candidates. Now, you might have something very pointed for an incumbent because they're the ones who've done the job that you might or might not be happy with, but the opponent can always answer it with how they might have handled it themselves 10 times better, or whatever that multiple is. Then the cards get brought to the card sorter, they get handed to me. I go through them and try to place them in a good order. My sorter, who's actually from here, I'm not from your voting district, might know of a burning issue that I should definitely ask that I won't have known. And we typically don't get all the questions answered. If we don't, I'm sure that your candidates can stay for a few minutes afterwards in case you want to grab them by the lapels and demand an answer to something that you wanted to know. It will be running on cable, and I think that we are negotiating to have it posted in its entirety on YouTube as well, and by the end of the debate, I think the forum, I might have some more information for you about that. Please hold all of your applause to the very end, even though I know you're very excited to applaud for your own candidate. And it is okay to take photographs, but pretend that you are at a children's auditorium. Do not annoy the parents behind you by taking pictures up over your head. Don't be in the aisles. Under no circumstances can anybody but the professional press come down and be in the front. Okay? All right, any questions? Any questions for me, gentlemen? All right, I have a track record of making at least one mistake in every forum where I call on the wrong person or cut them off at the wrong time. I know everyone will let me know if I do that, but otherwise we're going to start with Mr. Riles, and he has 2 minutes for his opening statement. Mr. Riles.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters for bringing us out here tonight. I want to welcome everyone to the Chamber of Vetoes, a city hall of doom and gloom and angst and anxiety. It's a bad economy, so we must be depressed. The battles are fought here. The 4 years of no teamwork between my opponent and the city council have resulted in 41 vetoes, with 37 of them overturned. The mayor's been quoted as saying, "The veto is my best weapon." A weapon against who? If the aldermen truly represent their constituency, then who is my opponent fighting against? He vetoes, but he doesn't have a plan. The vast majority of his vetoes have been overridden. So rather than leadership and team building, we're left with empty symbolism and bullying. 19 vetoes against 5-1 or 6-1 alderman votes. My opponent has chaired in this very same chamber such landmark discussions that lasted for 8 weeks over such unthinkable horrors as whether cab drivers should be wearing shoes as opposed to flip-flops, and if the proper number of dogs to be owned by Park Ridge residents is actually 3 or 4. A chamber where our police department has reported on the increase of mental health cases they are seeing, yet we cut the funding to local mental health agencies. A chamber where one alderman served but found the atmosphere so toxic he resigned in midterm. A chamber where we honor our teens when they accomplish great things, yet we eliminate the funding of the teen center and force it to close. In the last 4 years, my opponent has made this room a room of discord, a room of petty disputes, and a room of dark futures.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here. This campaign has gone on for months, and my opponent still has not uttered a single word about what he would have done differently in the past 4 years that would have made a difference to the taxpayers. His criticisms are not about the results that have been achieved. His criticisms are about how we achieved them. He says that results do not matter, that this is a campaign about personalities. Well, of course he says that. What else can he say? After 4 years of multi-million-dollar deficits that reduced our general fund to a dangerously low level, we're about to pass a budget in this chamber with the city council and the staff all cooperating together that'll result in the 4th budget surplus in a row. So it's hard to argue with that. Sales tax revenues, annual sales tax revenues are up about $1 million over the past 4 years. It's hard to argue with that. We have the most transparent government in the area, far more transparent than it was 4 years ago. It's hard to argue with that. We have a renewed emphasis on infrastructure, including a large flood control projects here in town, in all parts of town. It's hard to argue with that. So what is Larry arguing? He's arguing that I don't smile enough, that I'm not nice enough, that I don't hug people enough. Well, Larry, hugging people and being warm and fuzzy does not pay the city's bills, and it does not keep the people's property taxes as low as possible. I've spent the last 4 years doing everything in my power to fight for the taxpayers. I make no apologies for doing so, and I will continue to do so for another 4 years if I'm elected on April 9th. Oh, and one other thing. There have been 43 override votes of vetoes in this chamber. Out of those 43 votes, 22 of the veto votes resulted in the vetoes being sustained, 21 overridden, and I've got them all right here if anybody wants to see them later.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Schmidt will take the first question first. The question timing is now 1 minute per speaker, and each candidate will answer each question, but there won't be a rebuttal. Remember, there's no saving of time. Okay, so first question, Mr. Schmidt. What will be your top 3 priorities as mayor? Be specific in 1 minute.
Okay, my top 3 priorities as mayor are trying to achieve 4 more budget surpluses over the following 4 years, to continue working on our infrastructure issues, including flood control, and also pressing ComEd to make sure that they continue to improve the electrical grid, and our renewed emphasis on tree reforestation, because the city is losing its trees at an alarming rate. And then the third priority would be to increase transparency, hopefully to get the television station that will be able to show the meetings to all cable subscribers.
Thank you. Mr. Riles.
My top 3 priorities are going to be economic development, collecting the money that's owed the city of Park Ridge and uncollected fines and fees, specifically looking at every budget line to see what programs that we need for the city of Park Ridge and those we need to reduce, and looking at bringing retail to the city of Park Ridge.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Riles will take the next question first. When we have more people on the panel, this doesn't seem quite as odd as it does. So everyone will essentially answer 2 questions, answer 2 questions, answer 2 questions. So, Mr. Riles, 1 minute for this next question. What are your plans to make city administration and staff more user-friendly in their relationships with businesses, contractors, residences, and others, so that the permit and inspection process is more easily understood and completed in a reasonable period of time?
We've got to do some work on our website so that the citizens of Park Ridge understand what's fully expected when they submit for a permit and when they go through the building process. There's something called a work management improvement program. We're going to take a look at people plus paper times time. It's something that we used in the business world at Boston Mutual when I was a vice president there. It's something that we used in the armed forces of the United States around the world, because time is money. And when you do it the right way, the citizens and the employees are both happy and they're on the same team.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt?
Yes, the city's actually already working hard to improve the permitting and inspection process. As I mentioned yesterday at the chamber debate, we spent the first 3 years of my term were spent basically without a professional leading the Community Preservation and Development Department. We now have a professional in place. He's already met with local developers and business owners in an effort to discuss how the process of inspections and permitting can be improved. Communication on the website is important, but more important than that is having staff properly trained so that they can communicate with people when they come in to the Community Preservation and Development Department and have questions about the permitting and inspection process.
Thank you. And Mr. Schmidt takes this next question first. How do we make Park Ridge more family-friendly? What is your position on the youth campus?
Well, those are two questions. One, Park Ridge is already family-friendly. I'm not sure how you can make it any more family-friendly except to lower their property taxes as low as possible so that they have more money to go out and enjoy themselves. As far as the youth campus goes, the youth campus issue is a Park District issue. It is not a city issue. I think it would be improper for city officials to interject themselves into a matter which is the domain of a different governmental body. So I have no opinion, no public opinion on the Park District issue.
Thank you. Mr. Riles?
We make this place more family-friendly by being family-friendly ourselves. We're the face of Park Ridge. I will be the mayor every day, a full-time mayor. Walk the streets, talk to the people. We'll be more friendly to those services and those programs that are out to help the citizens of Park Ridge. The Center of Concern, MyCAF, Main Center. As a lieutenant governor of Kiwanis and a president of the local Kiwanis Club, we were ingrained in families and services. I will help and look more at things like the Taste of Park Ridge, First Fridays, great programs. We need more of those. The Civic Orchestra, what a great organization. And as far as the youth campus goes, I agree with my esteemed friend over here that I don't want to influence any citizen on how they vote for the youth campus referendum.
Thank you. Mr. Riles, what is your plan for economic development in Park Ridge, and specifically if you could address attracting retailers, businesses, and restaurants, et cetera?
Sat on 4 economic development committees over the years, one of them in a city that had 9.5 million people in it. I'm all about economic development and attracting retail. It's a 3-pronged program. It's called Stay Home, Bring Home, and Sell Home. We're going to put back together again the Economic Development Committee. We're going to put together a committee of CEOs, CFOs, and COOs in this city to advise us. We're going to look at putting going out and bringing in a consulting firm for economic development. It's something that this city's needed for far too long. And we're going to go around all of the other suburbs all the way around us. We're sucking their economic development dust. We've got to have some programs in here to flip this thing upside down and start bringing outside money into the city of Park Ridge and looking at the reasons we need to stay here and spend our own money.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt?
Yes. Right now, the budget we're working on has, I believe, $40,000 approximately for the position of a economic development director, marketing professional. I'm completely in favor of having someone like that either on staff or available as a consultant. About a year ago, I created the Economic Development Task Force, made up of many local business people and residents who worked very hard for a year, coming up with pages and pages of recommendations, which I have directed the city staff and the city council to consider carefully over the next few weeks and months. I'm quite certain that many of those recommendations will be implemented. There will come a time, I'm sure, when we will ask that task force to reconvene to look at the progress that we've been making. So by no means do I believe that their work is over. Finally, I'm going to continue to do what I've been doing for the last 4 years, which is to urge residents to shop locally, because every dime they spend in Park Ridge and every dime of sales tax revenue that they generate is one dime less of property taxes we need.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt, for flood prevention, what will you do as mayor?
For flood prevention, well, we already actually started that 4 years ago. So I'm not going to be starting anything new. I'm just simply going to be continuing the work that I and our staff and our flood control task force have been doing for the past 4 years, which is implementing the comprehensive flood control plan, which was developed approximately 2 years ago. We're already a couple years into it. There have been a couple projects already finished. There will be 6 projects finished later this year, including one up in the very hard-hit Second Ward in the Manor area. People are very grateful that that's going to be happening. There are other projects going to be down Cumberland Avenue, down on Talcott Place. There are other projects that are on the drawing board right now, which will help the area to the west of the country club. And it's one of my highest priorities. It's been one of my highest priorities since I took office to work on flood control.
Thank you. Mr. Riles?
It certainly needs to be one of our highest priorities. We need a comprehensive funding strategy for flood control, and that strategy starts at the top. We have borrowed money to work on our sewers, and that's we've got cities and suburbs all around us that have people who are experts at writing grants and asking for water reclamation money. The city of Elmwood Park got $5 million for upgrading their sewers. We borrowed $5 million to upgrade our sewers. We need somebody in City Hall, and we need to make them an expert at applying for grants and applying for water reclamation dollars in this city. We have to have a comprehensive funding plan to have a comprehensive sewer plan. And we also need to make sure that our public works folks are doing regular cleanings of our sewer system. We need to stay on top of that.
Thank you. Mr. Riles takes this first. Do either of you think it is appropriate to accept union campaign contributions?
The United States Supreme Court gave unions the authority, or authorized unions, to donate money to political campaigns. An exorbitant amount of money might seem to be inappropriate, but as long as your integrity is intact, and mine is, and you can't be bought, then if somebody comes to you and they knock on your door and they tell you that they want to support your campaign, and it's 8 weeks ahead of the election, and they've been bullied and abused for 4 years, who would you expect they might want to try to support? Secondly, at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you got the salt truck driver running down your street, cleaning the snow off your streets, are you running outside and asking him if he's a union employee or a non-union employee? I don't think so.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt?
No. And I'll go further. This is actually fairly disturbing because Mr. Riles has accepted a $1,000 contribution from our Public Works Employees Union at the very time that the city is negotiating with the Public Employees Union on a new contract. I find that to be borderline conflict of interest. The fact is that unions, by their very nature, are designed to do the best job they can to get as much taxpayers' money as they can for their union members. And that's the job that they are designed to do. My job as mayor is to protect the taxpayers' interests. And so I would never, ever take a dime from a labor union.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt takes this next question first. Could either of you explain why it took so long to get Whole Foods into construction? Each month cost this city $15,000, is that right? $15,000 in revenues.
Yeah, I asked that question about 3 or 4 times during city council meetings, and the answer was that the owners, the landowners, the developers themselves were having some internal disputes. Once those internal disputes were resolved, the project was a go, and you should start seeing some construction work any day now on that site.
Thank you. Mr. Riles?
It's a mystery. There's been some disputes, all right. Internal, external. We hope and pray that Whole Foods starts moving something pretty soon. But I'm not privy to the reasons that Whole Foods is not moving along at a pace. Let's wait and see what happens.
Thank you. Mr. Riles, isn't the TIF bond payment issue phony because it could be completely avoided by not passing abatement ordinances in December?
I don't think the TIF bond issue is phony. I think there's a lot we could have done about the TIF bond issue by now. If you borrowed money on your home in 2005, by now you would have remortgaged that house or refinanced that house. One of the first notes I wrote down, and I guess the consultant that came in not too long ago made me look like a genius, is why we haven't restructured that note. It's beyond me, I don't know. We need to work and develop to the uptown development. We need to fill those storefronts. We need to ease the burden of that TIF. There are a lot of things we can do. Go to the school boards, go to the park boards, work out a decent debt relief with those folks.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, the council debated about a year ago whether to refinance the TIF debt, and at that time they decided not to because they didn't want to stretch it out any further and impose the TIF debt on our children and our grandchildren. Then the council decided that we would hire a consultant to produce a study which would give us various options that we could work with, and we are considering those options now. One of them is refinancing, but it's very important to know, and you would know this if you had been coming to the meetings, Larry, that you're only allowed, as my understanding is, you're only allowed to refinance the TIF once. Therefore, you better make sure that when you do your refinancing, you're picking the very best time, because 10 years later, 15 years later, if you decide you need to refinance it again, you cannot. That's the law. So we're going to be looking at how to make the TIF obligation better, easier for us to handle over the next few months. But it's a problem which is very difficult to solve.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt, many city employees seem to be leaving city employment. Is that true? And in your opinion, why?
I couldn't tell you about the mid-level staff, but I can tell you about the department heads, and I know that this has come up before. The fact is that out of the department heads who left, a number of them should have left, and some of them that did leave left on their own accord. For instance, let's talk for the city manager, Mr. Hock. He should have been gone 2 years ago because he was not a good manager. As it turns out, the city council decided to give him a little more time, and then the city council voted unanimously to terminate his contract. So I didn't even fire him. That's not how it works. The city council fired him. The human resources manager left on her own accord. Juliana Mallard, the deputy city manager, took a job as a full city manager in Hanover Park because she was not guaranteed by the city council that she would get the city manager job here. So she had a bird in the hand and she took it. And the finance and budget director.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Thank you.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Riles.
So let's blame everybody else for the mass exodus of employees out of Park Ridge. Empty seats. We recently hired a temp organization come in and help everybody complete the budget. We've heard over and over and over again that the reason the process for permits is slower is because we need to hire some help. Mayors of another town not too long ago told me, thank you for sending me 3 of the best employees I've ever had. Yep, we fired the city manager here. The deputy city manager, finance director's gone, HR director's gone. We've lost a lot of valuable history in Park Ridge, and it's going to be very, very hard to replace.
Thank you. Okay, folks, this is our plea for a few more questions because we still have several, but I'm going to be able to fit a few in at the very end, I think, more than what we have. And so if you need a card, put your hand up. If you have a question written, hold up your card. Okay, thank you. And here we go. We start with Mr. Riles. Would you support a tax? It says in parens garbage, so would you support a garbage tax to quickly reduce the TIF obligation, say $10 per month per house?
No. I wouldn't support a tax. Our citizens don't need any more taxes. There are other things that need to be done about the TIF before we go to the citizens and start trying to increase their tax. It's something that doesn't need to be done. Again, I'm telling you, we need to deal with the TIF. It's here. We need to use the uptown development. We need to fill the storefronts. We need to fill the vacant lots. The consultant said the very same thing I'm saying. There are many other measures before you start looking at raising the taxes of the citizens of Park Ridge.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt?
No. No garbage tax. Thank you.
All righty then. Mr. Schmidt, how do you see your relationship the next 4 years with the social service agencies in Park Ridge?
The same as it's been the last 4 years, which is some of them love me and some of them hate me. My relationship with most of the social service agencies is one where I have made clear that I don't think the taxpayers' money should be used to fund those agencies. But what I have done is I've tried my best to use my position as mayor to publicize their events. I go to their events. I urge other people to go to their events. And I think that is the best way to go about it.
Thank you. Mr. Riles?
Social service agencies are a part of the heartbeat of this city. This city could not survive without the great volunteers we have in this city performing the services that they do. There's been an increase in mental health issues, and the police department is having to handle more mental health cases now, and we cut funding for those services that help us with those mental health cases in the city of Park Ridge. We've had, he said some of the social service agencies love him. I don't know who they are. Most of the social service agencies would tell you that they've had a hard time over the last 4 years. We just closed the teen center. Where are the teens going to go now? I don't know.
Thank you. Mr. Riles, 4 years from now, how will you measure your success as mayor? Provide metrics if applicable.
The same way I measured my success when I was leading soldiers. I had Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and we had a $750 million budget. It's 1,100 and something pages long. We had a school system. We had our churches. We had hospitals. I measure my successes in how successful the citizens are in the city of Park Ridge, how happy this city is, put smiles back on the faces of the citizens of Park Ridge. We're downtown. It's a great place for our citizens and our families to meet on Saturday mornings, and they've all got smiles back on their faces. All of my success is only as far as the success of the citizens of Park Ridge. Our taxes aren't up. Our social services are better off. Our infrastructure is better than it was when I started. And that's the only way to measure success in a city.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, I'll probably, well, there are a couple ways. There's the tangible way and the intangible way. The tangible way is to simply look at the numbers and look at the results, and that basically has to do with your general fund balance. And if your general fund balance is continuing to be healthy, which it is getting to that point now, then I would consider that to be a success. As far as intangible results, it's really the same. It would be the same 4 years from now as it is right now and has been over the past 4 years, which is just talking to the people and getting the reactions of the people, whether I'm at Jewel, whether I'm on the train platform, whether I'm at one of the community events. I'm all over town, and people come up to me and they tell me. And frankly, this notion that people in Park Ridge are running around with a glum look on their face and they're all sad and depressed is a picture that Mr. Riles is trying to paint, but it's just not true.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt, what would you say are the most significant mistakes you have made on the job in your career? And what did you learn from your mistakes?
If you count my career as an alderman, probably voting the last 2 votes I cast as an alderman, actually the only 2 votes I cast as an alderman to vote for the budgets that were passed under the previous mayor. I was new. I was a new alderman. I didn't understand budgeting that well. I did not understand the significance of the general fund as opposed to other funds. And if I could go back and do it all over again, I would have been I would have approached budgeting when I was an alderman much differently. As the mayor, I've thought about that, and I really can't think of anything that I would have been done differently, because everything I do in this chamber is designed to further the interests of the taxpayers, and I think that's what I've been doing, and I don't regret anything that I've done in that regard.
Thank you. Mr. Riles.
Mistakes I've made in my careers. 26 years jumping out of airplanes. Hit a rock one time at Cano Air Base in Honduras and broke a leg. So maybe I would have dodged the rock. Leading Fort Campbell, Kentucky in the 101st Airborne Division to the Gulf War and bringing them back was a pleasure, and there certainly was no mistake there. Getting in the restaurant business. I was a principal in a chain of barbecue restaurants called Blues. And in Columbus, Ohio, Champaign, Urbana, Madison, Wisconsin, and these restaurants were a tough business. And I was fortunate enough to be able to sell my percentage of those restaurants. So restaurant business is not anything I'd get into again.
Thank you. All right, here's more of a softball, just in the middle here. Mr. Riles, every year I am disappointed in the Christmas lights in Uptown Park Ridge. Is there a solution to make the decorations prettier?
Well, maybe we get better management But I got to tell you, to me, it's one of the great events now that the city of Park Ridge does. The volunteerism and the teamwork there. I happened to early on meet with Jim Bruno on Starbucks one day, and myself and a great man named Tony Tripp strung cables across the top of buildings the very first year that we did this. And then we got the Scouts involved, and I'll never forget my son, a Boy Scout, was interviewed by the Chicago Tribune, and they asked him why he was, why are you out here stringing Christmas lights? And at the time he was 6 years old, and he looked up at the reporter and said, well, how would you expect Santa Claus to find Park Ridge?
Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, I don't think I would change a thing other than maybe I'd have the shorter boys and girls working on the shorter trees, and I'd have the taller people working on the taller trees. It might work out better, and maybe the organizers next year can figure out how to go about doing that. I'm sure some of the trees look imperfect at times, but that's the beauty of it. I mean, I have a 2-year-old granddaughter who drew a picture for me, and it's pretty difficult to tell exactly what it is. And of course, it's not the neatest looking picture you've ever seen, but to me, it's very, very dear. And I think that the kids who are out there and they're putting the lights on the trees, they know which tree they did, and they drive by and they see that tree, and they're very proud of it. And I think we should all be proud of their efforts. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect, so, and neither are our Christmas trees, but there are Christmas trees, and we should appreciate them.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt. Back to the serious ones. If faced with the choice between raising taxes or renegotiating the agreements with the school districts to pay off the TIF obligations, which would you choose and why?
Well, that one's easy. I would never raise taxes unless it's absolutely necessary. So, of course, the very first thing we should do, and we will do, and we are planning on doing it, is going back to the Park District and the school districts and asking them for relief in terms of renegotiation. So that is definitely the first resort.
Thank you. Mr. Riles?
Just as easy for me. I've already said that. I would have gone some time ago and worked with the school districts and the park districts to restructure that debt.
Thank you. Mr. Riles, have any candidates, or I suppose, has either of you taken contributions from any city vendors?
No, I haven't. I believe my opponent has taken $8,000 in the last 4 years from Mr. Savasini, who has American Eagle, and they have a contract with the city of Park Ridge. I thought it was kind of peculiar that they would want to give me a hard time over $1,000 from a union when my opponent's taken $8,000 from a city vendor with a contract in place.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt?
Yes, I have received some contributions from Mr. Savannasini personally, not from his business. As it turns out, the American Eagle has been the city's website vendor since long before I took office. I'm not called upon to vote on anything that involves American Eagle, and I see nothing wrong with it.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt, how would you handle the PADS program for the homeless?
Well, that's been handled. What we did 4 years ago, it was about almost 5 years ago, 4.5 years ago, was go through the process of setting up an ordinance which would permit homeless shelters in Park Ridge. And if a homeless shelter wanted to come into Park Ridge tomorrow, they would be allowed to come into Park Ridge. The only requirement would be that they would have to go through an application process, and they would be required to comply with our zoning ordinance.
Thank you. Mr. Riles?
So I think somewhere in there he said that he was in favor of PADS as long as they follow the city zoning ordinance. there was quite a battle over pads when some of the churches came around 4 years ago, and there was a lot of heated discussions, and my opponent got in the middle of some of those heated discussions and made some comments about pads, which had nothing to do with what he just said just now. I think pads should be left up to the churches and the members of those churches as long as they follow the city ordinances and the zoning laws in this city.
Thank you. Mr. Riles, please talk about some things that you could imagine vetoing.
Some things that I could imagine vetoing. Raising taxes. I could imagine vetoing that. I could imagine vetoing 4-3 alderman votes if it doesn't send a strong enough message to the citizens of Park Ridge. I could imagine vetoing ridiculous purchases, but I would doubt that our great city council would ever try to buy something ridiculous. So there are several reasons to veto something.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt?
Yeah, that's easy. I would veto anything that is not in the best interests of the taxpayers, and that generally means anything that is not designed to pay for an essential city service, which is primarily police and fire services, public works services such as road repairs, street cleaning, snow removal, and that would be it.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidt, how many days a week do you work outside of Park Ridge on non-Park Ridge, non-volunteer work? Would this be your only job?
Wait, could you repeat that, please?
How many days a week do you work outside of Park Ridge on non-Park Ridge, non-volunteer work? Would this be your only job, or is this your only job?
I think you're asking me if I have a day job. Yes. The answer is yes, and that is 5 days a week, although I always bring my briefcase home as a ritual on Friday nights with the full intention of going into it and trying to get some more work done on Saturdays and Sundays. Out of 52 weekends a year, I'll bet I've succeeded twice in doing that. So we'll stick with 5 days a week.
Thank you. Mr. Riles?
I'm here every day. I've retired 3 times now. There may be some law against retiring 4. I'm not sure. But my wife and I have both become professional volunteers in the city of Park Ridge. My full intention is to walk we've got one going to Lincoln now, and one going to Lincoln next year, and one going to Roosevelt. So my full intention is to, wife and I will split up. We'll walk our children to school, and I will come to City Hall and be the mayor all day long, every day. You will be able to knock on my door and find me. I will be looking after city services and the citizens of Park Ridge. That'll be my full-time job. I realize that it calls for a part-time mayor, and I will donate this grand salary that the mayor of Park Ridge gets to my church. So I'll be a full-time mayor, and I'll be here every day.
Thank you. Mr. Riles, and this is going to be our last question, then we're going to go to the wrap-up. I might run us a couple minutes after 8, but I'd like to give each of the speakers 3 minutes instead of the 1.5 that we had originally planned to take care of whatever notes they've been taking. So here's your last question. Mr. Riles takes it first. What positive things can you say about your opponent?
My opponent, let's see. No, it's not.
I got a list here for you.
Okay, that's all right. It's truly not that hard. I will tell you that he has vetoed some things that I would have vetoed. Some of the things he's done, some of the, I'm not so sure about Mr. Hawk, but there are things we would have done maybe just a tad differently. When you get rid of some folks, or you need to have, even if the city council fired them, my opponent was kind of pushing that along. But there are some things he's done in the city. Well, I will tell you that again, this volunteerism at Christmas time, I have to tell you, great idea.
That wasn't so hard.
Mr. Schmidt.
Well, I've been, as you might expect, I've tried to find out as much as I could about Mr. Riles, and I know that he does a lot of volunteer work in town. I know he's been in the Kiwanis Club. Actually, I don't want to build you up too much, but he's done a lot of volunteering. I know there are a lot of people that appreciate the volunteering he's done, and I hope that over the next 4 years, in his free time, he will continue to volunteer with all of those different organizations.
Thank you. Now, I don't want to mess my timekeepers up because I did not give them a 2-minute card, assuring them that they wouldn't need it. Here's your 2-minute card. So we'll have, each of our candidates will have 3 minutes to wrap, and I know that I do not need to remind them, no personal attacks, because that will add time on the clock to your opponent. So you can say what you don't like about what they might do politically, but I think we all understand the difference between politics and personal, although the politics is kind of personal these days. So we're starting in reverse order. So Mr. Schmidt goes first with his 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, there are a couple things I wanted to touch on that were left hanging. The full-time mayor thing, it's fine to say that you're going to be a 24/7 mayor and you're going to be here at City Hall every day, except that's not your job. The city's run by the city manager, who makes right now $140,000 a year. The previous city manager made $170,000 a year. He runs the city. He does the hiring and firing. He does the managing, not the mayor. The mayor just gets in the way for the most part. The mayor's job is to run the meetings, is to try to set the discussion, the policy discussion, but it is not the mayor's job to sit in that office all day long and tell the department heads and the city manager how to do their job. That's simply not the mayor's job. The other thing I wanted to mention that was left hanging was one of the department heads that left was Allison Stutz, who was our finance and budget director. She was one of the best employees this city has ever had. Now, it's been mentioned that she left the city as if that was somehow my fault. The fact is that when Ms. Stutz was hired, she made clear that she was not going to be staying here for a long time because she was going to class, working on her financial planning certificate, I think it's called, and her lifelong dream was to open her own business and to put out her own shingle. And in case anybody's wondering whether there was bad blood between Ms. Stutz and me, you can go to my website, look under endorsements, and there is Allison Stutz's name right there. So Allison and I got along just fine. Now to the actual closing, which is more good things about Mr. Riles. I applaud Larry's service to our country, and I recognize his success as an insurance salesman, but his leadership in those areas has done nothing to prepare him to lead the city government. I was a commissioner on the Planning and Zoning Commission, then I became an alderman for 2 years, and I have been the mayor for 4 years. Larry's sole experience in city government was serving on the police task force, which recommended $1.5 million police facility renovation, which amounts to about 10% of property tax levy increase all by itself. And that is the kind of leadership that the taxpayers can do without. I've spent 6 years in this room fighting for the taxpayers. That's the kind of leadership that the people need and want. And if I'm reelected, I will continue to fight for the taxpayers with every bone in my body for the next 4 years. So please vote for me on April 9th.
Thank you. Mr. Riles, 3 minutes.
I'm running for mayor because I believe Park Ridge can do better than we've done in the last 4 years. We have to do better. We need to use this room more about talking about the future of our community. These two are my future, and we have others in this room that have children that are the future of Park Ridge. The atmosphere of intimidation has to end. Park Ridge can do better. We've told our teens and seniors how much they cost, but not what they're worth. Park Ridge can do better. We've told our social service agencies and our great service organizations in this city how much they cost, but not what they're worth. And Park Ridge can do better. We're told of the burden and the cost of the Taste of Park Ridge and Concerts in the Park, but not what they're worth. Park Ridge can do better than this. We've told our brave policemen and our brave firemen and paramedics how much they cost, but not what they're worth. And Park Ridge can do better. We've bullied our city employees and told them how much they cost, but not what they're worth. And Park Ridge can do better. We've told our library and the staff how much they cost, but not what they're worth. And we can do better than that. We've been told what the health and welfare of our great citizens cost, but not what it's worth. We can do better. This is the same chamber where 24 past aldermen and present aldermen and 3 past mayors have served our great citizens with over 100 years of combined experience that now currently endorse me for mayor. And I'm grateful and humbled by their support. I manage the health and welfare of 38,000 soldiers and families at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I interfaced with 5 mayors of the cities around Fort Campbell. I was in ongoing contact with the governors of Tennessee and Kentucky. I served as a liaison to the senators and congressmen on both state and federal levels. I am well qualified to be your next mayor. I'm sincerely asking for your vote on April 9th, early voting March 25th. May God bless the United States of America, the city of Park Ridge, and the great citizens of Park Ridge. And I appreciate, once again, the time for coming in front of the League of Women Voters. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Now, I don't want anyone to go anywhere, but the first thing we're going to do is give a big round of applause for your 2 candidates. Just a couple of wrapping up words. Guys, sorry, just sit down for a second. I'm talking about you. Every time I come to Park Ridge, and this is absolutely no exception to the rule, I see that you really always have very passionate, very committed candidates. They've really thought through what they'd like to do. Their hearts are always in the right places. They always want to help improve your city for you. They're always impressive. They are this time. And I always like to add these days, it takes guts to run for office, folks. It really takes guts. I hope none of you ever look at the comment sections on blogs about people. It's some difficult stuff. So along with their other maybe more positive attributes is really some intestinal fortitude to do this on your behalf. And I want another round of applause just for their bravery. Now, as you know, I've been parachuted in from the League of Women Voters of Evanston. We always do it somebody outside the voting district, but your League of Women Voters of Park Ridge folks have put this on for you. And we like to say we're the people who roll up their sleeves and really do the hands-on work of democracy. And we have got name tents and rules went out for the candidates to sign, publicity went out. All this work needs to happen, and it's done by the members of the League of Women Voters. They are a membership organization. Now, they like warm bodies that are willing to do stuff, but they also like your membership checks because it also costs a little bit of money to do this. And on the back table is a membership form for your League of Women Voters of Park Ridge, and I have to tell you, it's $50, and the way you're all talking about all your taxes here and everything, maybe nobody can afford it, but it's about the cheapest league membership of any of the leagues that I know in the Chicago metropolitan area. And then then, if you do want to get involved, you can get moderator training. You can be the timekeepers. You can be the card sorter. You can wander around with cards, but you can also help plan forums, help plan educational meetings. So I really urge you to pick up one of the forums and consider joining, because every time I come here and moderate, we do it to a packed room. And I got to tell you, there's no 50, 60, 75 members in the League of Women Voters. So it's like listening to NPR, right? You've benefited. Paying membership is voluntary, but come on, folks, show a little love in their direction. Election, April 9th. Friends do not let friends stay home on Election Day, so spread it around and bring a friend, okay? Thank you so much for coming out tonight.